"Let me dance with your daughter. I'll make her walk again," the dirty boy whispered to the millionaire. Harrison Sterling exploded in cruel laughter. "You? A street rat who can barely afford shoes?" But when the boy took the wheelchair-bound girl's hand, what happened next froze every heart in that mansion and changed their lives forever. The autumn rain had stopped hours ago, but 12-year-old Daniel Rivers was still soaked to the bone. His shoes, if you could call them that, were held together with wire and hope, squeaking with each step as he walked along the pristine sidewalk of Millionaire's Row, leaving muddy footprints on concrete that probably cost more per square foot than his entire neighborhood. He didn't belong here. Every fiber of his being screamed that truth. The mansions towering on either side of him were fortresses of wealth, each one more intimidating than the last. Manicured lawns stretched like green oceans. Luxury cars sat in driveways like sleeping panthers. Security cameras tracked his movement with silent judgment, but Daniel kept walking, clutching the crumpled flyer in his pocket. The paper was damp, the ink smudged, but he'd memorized every word weeks ago. Autumn charity gala at Sterling Manor. Entertainment and performances welcome. All talented youth encouraged to audition. All talented youth. The words had burned themselves into his brain. They hadn't said, all wealthy youth, or all properly dressed youth. Just talented. And Daniel had one talent, the only thing in his life that made sense, that made him feel whole. He could dance. Not the formal ballet taught in expensive studios. Not the carefully choreographed routines from private schools. Daniel danced like the wind moved, like water flowed, like music became physical. He'd learned in the streets, in abandoned warehouses, in any space where he could move freely. His teachers had been YouTube videos watched on library computers, street performers who'd taken pity on a skinny kid with hungry eyes, and his own relentless practice. When Daniel danced, he wasn't poor. He wasn't the kid whose father had abandoned them before he was born. He wasn't the son of a mother working 3 jobs who still couldn't keep the lights on. He was just movement and music and pure, perfect freedom. Sterling Manor loomed ahead, a 3-story masterpiece of stone and glass that looked like it had been transplanted from a European castle. Daniel's stomach twisted with familiar anxiety. The security guard at the gate was already watching him, hand moving toward his radio. "Stop right there!" the guard called out, stepping into Daniel's path. His nameplate read, Officer Mitchell, and his expression read, "You don't belong here." "I'm here for the audition," Daniel said, pulling out the flyer with trembling fingers. "For the gala. It says all talented youth." "Let me see that." Mitchell snatched the flyer, examining it like it might be counterfeit. His eyes traveled from the paper to Daniel's face, down to his broken shoes, back up to his second-hand jacket that was 2 sizes too small. "This is for legitimate performers, not street kids looking to cause trouble." "I'm not here to cause trouble," Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I'm a dancer. I just want a chance to audition." "A dancer?" Mitchell's laugh was sharp and mean. "Boy, look at yourself. You're filthy. You probably haven't had a proper meal in days. The Sterling Gala is one of the most prestigious events in the city. They have professional performers, trained artists, people with actual credentials." Each word was a hammer blow, but Daniel had heard worse. Much worse. "The flyer says all talented youth are encouraged." "I know what the flyer says," Mitchell interrupted. "But it also assumes a basic level of presentability. You can't just walk into Harrison Sterling's home looking like you crawled out of a dumpster." The mansion's front door opened, and Daniel's heart nearly stopped. A girl emerged, being pushed in a wheelchair by a nurse. She was maybe 10 years old, with long hair that caught the afternoon light. But it was her eyes that captured Daniel's attention. Sad eyes, old eyes, eyes that had seen too much pain for someone so young. Sophia Sterling. Even Daniel, who knew nothing about high society, had heard her story. The daughter of Harrison Sterling, the real estate mogul worth billions. 2 years ago, she'd been in a car accident that had killed her mother and left her paralyzed from the waist down. The tabloids had covered it obsessively. Photos of the grieving father carrying his wheelchair-bound daughter. Stories about the best doctors money could buy who still couldn't help her walk again. Sophia's gaze found Daniel, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Her expression shifted, curiosity replacing the boredom that had been there seconds before. "Who's that?" Sophia asked the nurse, pointing directly at Daniel. The nurse, a stern-looking woman named Mrs. Chen, frowned. "No one, dear. Just someone who got lost." "I'm not lost," Daniel said, finding courage he didn't know he had. "I'm here to audition for the gala." Sophia's eyes widened. "You're a performer?" "I'm a dancer." "Sophia, we need to go back inside," Mrs. Chen said firmly, beginning to turn the wheelchair. "Wait." Sophia's voice carried surprising authority for someone so young. "I want to see him dance." "Miss Sterling, your father would not approve of—" "My father isn't here right now." Sophia looked directly at Daniel. "Can you really dance, or are you just saying that?" Daniel's hands were shaking. This wasn't how he'd imagined this going. He'd pictured a formal audition, judges sitting at a table, a proper stage, not performing in a driveway for a girl in a wheelchair while a security guard glared at him. But something in Sophia's eyes called to him. A loneliness he recognized. A desperate need for something, anything, real and beautiful in a life that had become defined by limitations and tragedy. "I can dance," Daniel said quietly. "I don't have music, but I don't need it. The music is always there if you know how to listen." Officer Mitchell stepped forward. "Okay, that's enough. I'm calling this in. You need to leave before— Let him show me." Sophia's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "1 minute. If he's lying, then Officer Mitchell can escort him away. But if he's telling the truth—" She paused, and for the first time, something like hope flickered across her face. "If he's telling the truth, then I want him to audition for the gala." Mrs. Chen looked deeply uncomfortable, but she also clearly knew better than to argue with Sophia Sterling. "1 minute," she said to Daniel. "Then you leave." Daniel nodded. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He stepped back, giving himself space, and closed his eyes. The world fell away. The mansion, the security guard, the watching eyes, all of it dissolved. Daniel heard the music that was always playing in his head, felt the rhythm in his bones, and began to move. He'd once seen a documentary about water, how it could be gentle or fierce, how it could carve through stone or nurture life. That's what Daniel tried to capture in his movement. He flowed across the driveway, his body telling a story without words. Every gesture precise yet organic, every turn controlled yet wild. He forgot about his broken shoes, forgot about the mud on his clothes, forgot about everything except the pure joy of movement. This was who he was. This was the only thing that had ever made sense in his chaotic, difficult life. When he stopped, breathing hard, the world snapped back into focus. Sophia's hands were pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Chen looked stunned. Even Officer Mitchell had gone quiet, his earlier hostility replaced by reluctant amazement. "How did you learn to move like that?" Sophia whispered. "I taught myself," Daniel said simply. "I've been dancing since I was 5. "It's the only thing I'm good at." Before Sophia could respond, a voice cut through the moment like a knife. "What exactly is going on here?" Daniel turned to see a man striding down the mansion's front steps, and he knew immediately this was Harrison Sterling. The photos didn't do him justice, or maybe they did him too much credit. He was tall, imposing, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Daniel's mother made in 6 months. His face was handsome in a harsh way, all sharp angles and cold calculation. But it was his eyes that made Daniel's blood run cold. They were empty. Not angry or cruel, just profoundly empty, like looking into windows of an abandoned house. "Daddy!" Sophia's voice brightened. "You have to see this boy dance. He's amazing. He should be in the gala." Harrison's gaze moved to Daniel, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. His lip curled in an expression that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite a sneer. "This child," Harrison said the word like it tasted bad, "was trespassing on private property?" "Sir, I tried to send him away," Officer Mitchell said quickly, clearly afraid. "But Miss Sophia wanted to see him perform, and I thought—" "You're not paid to think, Mitchell. You're paid to keep undesirable elements away from my home." Harrison walked closer to Daniel, circling him like a predator examining prey. "Look at you. Filthy clothes. Broken shoes. You probably haven't bathed in days. And you have the audacity to come to my home, to present yourself to my daughter, looking like something that crawled out of the gutter." Each word was designed to wound, and they hit their marks perfectly. Daniel felt shame burning through him, hot and acidic. "Daddy, stop," Sophia said, her earlier joy evaporating. "He can dance, really dance. You should have seen—" "I don't need to see anything," Harrison interrupted, not even looking at his daughter. His eyes stayed locked on Daniel. "I can see everything I need to see. This is clearly some street urchin who thinks he can con his way into our home, probably planning to steal whatever he can get his hands on." "I'm not a thief," Daniel said, his voice shaking but determined. "I'm a dancer. I came here because the flyer said—" "I know what the flyer said," Harrison cut him off. "It was my wife's idea, years ago. She believed in giving opportunities to talented youth." He said the words mockingly. "She had a bleeding heart for lost causes. But my wife is dead, and I've learned that most people who claim to be talented are simply delusional." The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. Daniel had faced bullies before, had dealt with people who looked down on him for being poor. But Harrison Sterling's contempt was on another level entirely. It was surgical, precise, designed to destroy. "Let me tell you what I see," Harrison continued, his voice dropping to something almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. "I see a dirty child who's probably practiced a few moves from videos, who thinks that qualifies as talent. I see someone who doesn't understand that real art requires training, discipline, resources, things you clearly don't have and never will have." "You didn't see him dance," Sophia protested, tears in her voice now. "Daddy, please, just watch him for 1 minute." "Sophia, that's enough." Harrison's tone shifted when addressing his daughter, still cold, but with an edge of something that might have been love, buried deep beneath layers of ice. "You don't understand these things. This boy is trying to take advantage of your kind nature." Daniel should have left. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, walk away, save whatever dignity he had left. But something made him speak. "Let me dance with your daughter." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Harrison Sterling's head snapped toward Daniel, his expression shifting from contempt to genuine shock. "What did you just say?" Daniel's heart was racing, but he forced himself to continue. "Let me dance with Sophia. I've seen her eyes. She's trapped, not just in that wheelchair, but in loneliness. I know what that feels like. Let me show her that movement is more than walking. Let me teach her that she can still dance, even if she can't walk." Harrison's face went through several rapid changes: shock, disbelief, and then something that looked almost like rage. "You arrogant little—" He stopped himself, taking a visible breath. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly calm. "You think you can help my daughter? You, a street rat who probably doesn't even have a home to go back to, think you have something to offer, Sophia Sterling?" "I think everyone has something to offer," Daniel said, surprised by his own courage. "And I think Sophia deserves to feel joy again, to feel like she's more than her wheelchair." For a moment, just a fraction of a second, something flickered in Harrison's eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. But it was gone so fast Daniel might have imagined it. "You want to dance with my daughter?" Harrison asked, and his smile was the cruelest thing Daniel had ever seen. "Fine, I'll make you a deal. The gala is in 2 weeks. If you can perform, truly perform, not just flail around like you probably did for Sophia, if you can prove that you have actual talent and not just the delusions of a desperate child, then yes, you can dance with my daughter." Daniel's breath caught. "Really?" "Really," Harrison confirmed. "But when you fail, and you will fail, I want you to never come back here. I want you to accept that you don't belong in this world, that you never will belong, and that the sooner you accept your place in life, the less disappointment you'll face." It was a trap. Daniel knew it was a trap. Harrison Sterling was setting him up to fail publicly, to crush whatever hope he dared to kindle. But Daniel also knew he had no choice. "I accept," he said. Harrison's smile widened. "Excellent. The audition is this Saturday, 3 p.m. Don't be late." He turned to Officer Mitchell. "Escort this boy off the property, and make sure he understands that if he shows up looking like he does now, he won't make it past the gate." As Mitchell grabbed Daniel's arm, not roughly, but firmly, Sophia called out, "Wait, what's your name?" Daniel looked back at her, at this girl who'd shown him more kindness in 5 minutes than most people showed him in months. Daniel, he said. Daniel Rivers. I'll see you at the audition, Daniel Rivers, Sophia said. And despite everything, she was smiling. Show my father what real dancing looks like. As Officer Mitchell walked Daniel back to the gate, Harrison Sterling watched them go, his expression unreadable. Daddy, Sophia said quietly, why were you so mean to him? Harrison looked at his daughter, at the wheelchair that had become her prison, at the sadness that had taken up permanent residence in her eyes since the accident that had stolen her mother and her ability to walk. Because the world is mean, Sophia, he said, and it's better she learns that from me than from strangers who'll hurt her worse. But as he turned back to the mansion, Harrison Sterling felt something he hadn't felt in years, a tiny splinter of doubt, because that dirty boy had moved with a grace that money couldn't buy, and for just a moment, Harrison had seen his daughter smile. And that terrified him more than he would ever admit. The community center on Maple Street had seen better days, probably around the time Daniel was born. The paint was peeling, the windows were cracked, and the heating system worked only when it felt like it. But it had one thing that made it invaluable: a large empty room with a mirror along one wall and enough space to move. Daniel had been coming here since he was 7, sneaking in through the back entrance that never quite locked properly. The staff knew he was there. Mrs. Washington, who ran the after-school programs, had caught him once, and instead of kicking him out, had simply said, "Don't break anything, and clean up after yourself." Now, 5 days after his encounter with Harrison Sterling, Daniel was here every moment he wasn't in school or helping his mother. The audition was approaching like a storm on the horizon, and he had never felt more unprepared. "You're going to wear yourself out." Daniel stopped mid-movement, breathing hard. Mrs. Washington stood in the doorway, holding 2 bottles of water. She was in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that had seen every kind of hardship, but somehow remained kind. "I can't wear myself out," Daniel said, accepting the water gratefully. "I have to be perfect." "Perfect is impossible, honey. You know that." Mrs. Washington settled into one of the folding chairs along the wall. "I've been watching you dance for 5 years. You're already better than most professionals I've seen. What's really going on?" Daniel sat down hard on the floor, his legs finally giving out. "I made a stupid promise to a girl in a wheelchair. I told her I could teach her to dance even though she can't walk. And her father," his voice cracked, "her father is setting me up to fail, so he can prove that people like me don't belong in his world." "Harrison Sterling," Mrs. Washington said, and it wasn't a question. Daniel looked up, surprised. "You know him?" "I know of him. Everyone in this city knows of him. Brilliant businessman, ruthless negotiator, and from what I hear, a man who died inside the day his wife did." Mrs. Washington's expression was thoughtful. "He used to be different, you know, before the accident." "Different how?" "Kinder. His wife, Margaret, she was the heart of their family. She ran charity programs, volunteered at hospitals, genuinely cared about making the world better. Harrison supported her, loved her, built his empire partially to fund her causes." Mrs. Washington sighed. "Then the accident happened. Margaret died instantly. Sophia survived but lost the use of her legs. And Harrison lost himself." Daniel absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with the cold, cruel man who'd humiliated him. "That doesn't excuse how he treated me." "No, it doesn't," Mrs. Washington agreed. "Pain isn't an excuse for cruelty, but understanding where someone's cruelty comes from can help you navigate it." She leaned forward. "Daniel, why did you really offer to dance with his daughter?" The question caught Daniel off guard. He'd been asking himself the same thing for 5 days. "Because," he said slowly, working through his thoughts, "when I looked at her, I saw myself. Trapped, invisible, desperate for something, anything, that would make her feel alive again." He looked down at his hands, calloused from years of practice. "When I dance, I'm free, even if it's just for a few minutes." I thought, maybe I could give her that feeling. Mrs. Washington's eyes were shining with unshed tears. "That's a beautiful gift, Daniel. But you need to understand something. Harrison Sterling isn't going to make this easy. He's going to do everything in his power to prove you wrong, to humiliate you so thoroughly that Sophia never asks about you again." "I know. And you're still going to try?" "I have to." Daniel stood up, walking back to the center of the room. "I gave Sophia hope. I saw it in her eyes. If I don't show up, if I let her father's cruelty stop me, then I'm teaching her that hope is stupid, that dreams are pointless. I can't do that to her. Mrs. Washington smiled, and it was proud and sad at the same time. Then let's make sure you're ready. Show me what you've been working on. For the next 3 hours, Mrs. Washington, who Daniel learned had been a professional dancer before an injury ended her career, helped him refine his routine. She pushed him harder than he'd ever been pushed, critiquing every movement, demanding precision he didn't know he was capable of. Your fouette is sloppy, she said bluntly. You're relying on momentum instead of control. Again. Daniel tried again, and again, and again. By the time the community center closed for the night, every muscle in his body was screaming, but his movements had a polish they'd lacked before. Better, Mrs. Washington said. Not perfect, but better. Now go home. Your mother is probably worried. Daniel's apartment was a 40-minute walk from the community center. He could have taken the bus, but the $1.50 fare was better saved for food. As he walked through streets that grew progressively rougher, he thought about Sophia Sterling in her mansion, surrounded by luxury but trapped in her wheelchair. His own home was a 2-room apartment above a laundromat. The constant vibration from the machines below had cracked the walls, and the smell of industrial detergent had permanently soaked into everything. But it was home. His mother, Eleanor Rivers, was asleep on the couch when Daniel entered. She was still wearing her uniform from the diner where she worked the evening shift. A second uniform, from her morning job at the hotel, was draped over a chair, ready for tomorrow. Daniel covered her with a blanket, careful not to wake her. She worked herself to exhaustion every single day, and the few hours of sleep she got were precious. He noticed the mail on the table, mostly bills, all stamped with red, overdue notices. In the tiny bedroom they shared, Daniel pulled out the notebook where he'd been sketching ideas for his performance, but his mind kept drifting to Sophia, to the sadness in her eyes, to the way her father had looked at her with something that might have been love buried under layers of ice and anger. The next morning, Daniel woke to find his mother sitting at the small kitchen table, staring at the bills. "Mom," he said softly. Elena looked up, and Daniel's heart broke at the exhaustion in her face. She was only 33, but she looked older. Too many long shifts, too much worry, too much weight carried on shoulders that weren't meant to bear so much alone. "Good morning, baby," she said, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep okay?" "Mom, what's wrong?" She hesitated, then sighed. "The landlord is raising the rent, again, and the hotel is cutting hours." She rubbed her eyes. "It's fine. I'll figure it out. I always do." Guilt crashed over Daniel. "I could get a job. After school I could—" "Absolutely not," Elena said firmly. "Your job is to go to school and be 12 years old. I'll handle the adult problems." "But, Daniel," his mother took his hands, "I work these jobs so you don't have to, so you can have a chance at something better. Don't take that away from me." Daniel wanted to argue, but he knew that look in his mother's eyes. Stubborn pride mixed with love so fierce it was almost frightening. At school that day, Daniel could barely concentrate. His teachers asked questions he didn't hear. His classmates chatted about things that seemed trivial and distant. All he could think about was the audition, now just 9 days away. During lunch, he sat alone in the corner of the cafeteria, working through choreography in his head. He didn't notice Marcus Chen approaching until his former friend was standing right in front of him. "I heard you're auditioning for the Sterling Gala," Marcus said. Daniel looked up. Marcus had been his best friend until middle school, when Marcus's family had moved to a better neighborhood, and Marcus had decided he needed better friends to match. Now he hung out with the popular kids, the ones with new phones and designer shoes. "Yeah," Daniel said carefully. So I think you're crazy." Marcus sat down uninvited. "Harrison Sterling is on the board of directors for half the companies in this city. He's ruthless. He'll destroy you just for fun. Then why do you care?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Because we used to be friends, and I remember how much you love dancing. I don't want to see you get crushed." "I'll be fine," Daniel said, though he didn't feel fine at all. "Will you?" Marcus leaned forward. "Daniel, I've been to events at Sterling Manor. I've seen how those people operate. They'll eat you alive. The way you dress, the way you talk, where you're from, they'll use all of it against you." "I know," Daniel said quietly. Harrison Sterling already did that. He called me a street rat and a thief. He looked at me like I was garbage. And you're still going through with it? I have to. I made a promise. Marcus shook his head. To whom? To Sophia Sterling. Daniel, she's not your friend. She's a rich girl who was momentarily entertained by seeing a poor kid dance. She probably doesn't even remember your name. The words stung because part of Daniel worried they might be true. But then he remembered Sophia's eyes, the way she'd smiled, the tears that had fallen when she watched him move. You're wrong, Daniel said. She's trapped just like we are. Different cage, same feeling. That's naive, Marcus said, but his voice was gentle now. But I guess that's always been your problem. You believe people are better than they are. After Marcus left, Daniel spent the rest of lunch alone, doubt gnawing at him. Was he being naive? Was he setting himself up for humiliation so complete that he'd never recover? That afternoon, instead of going to the community center, Daniel found himself walking toward Sterling Manor. He didn't plan to go inside, just wanted to see it again, to remind himself what he was fighting for. He was standing across the street, staring at the mansion, when a black sedan pulled up beside him. The window rolled down, and Daniel's stomach dropped. Harrison Sterling sat in the back seat, looking at him with an expression of cold amusement. Mr. Rivers, Harrison said, taking measurements for your robbery attempt? I'm not, Daniel stammered. Relax, boy, I'm joking. Harrison's smile suggested he wasn't joking at all. Get in, I want to talk to you. Every instinct screamed at Daniel to run. But curiosity, and the faint hope that maybe, somehow, Harrison Sterling had changed his mind about him, made him open the car door and slide into the leather seat. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and old money. Harrison studied Daniel like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. You've been practicing, Harrison said. It wasn't a question. Every day, for hours. Good. Harrison's fingers drummed on the armrest. I'd hate for this to be too easy. Tell me, Daniel, what do you think you're going to accomplish at this audition? Daniel met his gaze. I'm going to prove that I'm a real dancer, that I deserve to perform at the gala, that I can help Sophia. Help Sophia, Harrison repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. You really believe that, don't you? You think your little street performances can somehow heal my daughter's broken body? I don't think I can make her walk, Daniel said carefully. But I think I can show her that movement is more than walking, that she can still be graceful, still be powerful, still dance even from a wheelchair. Something dangerous flashed in Harrison's eyes. My daughter doesn't need your pity or your amateur therapy. She has the best doctors money can buy. She has physical therapists, specialists, equipment that costs more than you'll make in your entire life. And is she happy? Daniel asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harrison's jaw tightened. Happiness is irrelevant. What matters is her health, her safety, her future. But what kind of future is it if she's miserable? Harrison's hand moved so fast Daniel didn't see it coming. He grabbed Daniel's collar, pulling him close. For a terrifying moment, Daniel thought the man might actually hit him. You don't know anything about my daughter, Harrison hissed. You don't know what we've been through, what we've lost. You're a child playing at understanding adult pain. Daniel's heart was racing, but he forced himself to speak. You're right. I don't know what you've lost, but I do know what it feels like to be alone, to feel like the world has forgotten you exist. And I saw that same feeling in Sophia's eyes. Harrison released him suddenly, sitting back with an expression Daniel couldn't read. Let me tell you what's going to happen, Harrison said, his voice cold and controlled again. You're going to show up to the audition. You're going to perform your little routine. The judges, all hand-selected by me, are going to see exactly what I see. A talented amateur with no training, no refinement, no understanding of real artistry. They're going to reject you. And Sophia will learn a valuable lesson about false hope and empty promises. Why? Daniel asked. Why do you want to hurt her like that? I'm not hurting her. I'm protecting her. Harrison looked out the window. The world is cruel to people who can't meet its standards. Sophia already knows that. She faces it every day in that wheelchair. If I let her believe that some street dancer can magically make everything better, I'm setting her up for worse pain when reality crashes down. Or, Daniel said quietly, you're so afraid of being hurt again that you'd rather crush hope before it can disappoint you. Harrison turned to look at him, and for just a second, Daniel saw through the armor to the broken man underneath. Then the mask slammed back into place. "Driver," Harrison called. "Stop the car." The sedan pulled over. Harrison gestured to the door. "Get out." And Daniel, Harrison's voice stopped him. "Don't tell Sophia about this conversation. Let her keep her naive excitement for a few more days. It'll make the lesson more effective when you fail." Daniel got out of the car, legs shaking. As the sedan pulled away, he stood on the sidewalk, trying to process what had just happened. Harrison Sterling wasn't just cruel. He was broken, shattered by loss, and determined to prevent any further pain by preemptively destroying anything that might offer hope. But that meant Sophia was trapped, not just in her wheelchair, but in her father's grief, living in a gilded cage built from fear and old wounds. Daniel pulled out his phone, an ancient flip phone that barely worked, and texted the only number he had for someone who might understand. "Mrs. Washington, I need help. Not with dancing, with understanding." The response came quickly. "Community Center, 20 minutes. When Daniel arrived, Mrs. Washington was waiting with hot chocolate and the kind of patience that only came from years of working with struggling kids. "Tell me everything," she said. Daniel did. He told her about the car ride, about Harrison's cruelty, about the fear he'd seen beneath the anger. Mrs. Washington listened without interrupting, her expression growing more thoughtful with each word. "That poor man," she said when Daniel finished. "Poor man." Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. "He's trying to sabotage me. He wants me to fail so completely that his daughter loses hope." "Yes," Mrs. Washington agreed, "because he already lost hope, and he can't bear to watch someone else go through the same pain he did." She set down her mug. "Daniel, what Harrison Sterling is doing is wrong. But it comes from a wound so deep he can't see past it. His wife died. His daughter was paralyzed. His entire world collapsed in one moment, and he's been living in the rubble ever since. That doesn't excuse—" "No, it doesn't," Mrs. Washington interrupted. "But understanding his pain can help you reach him. Because the real challenge isn't the audition, Daniel. It's breaking through Harrison's armor to show him that hope isn't his enemy." Daniel sat with that for a long moment. "I don't know if I can do that." "Neither do I," Mrs. Washington admitted. "But I know you're going to try, because that's who you are." As Daniel walked home that night, he thought about Harrison Sterling's empty eyes, about Sophia's sad smile, about his own mother working herself to death for his future. Everyone was trapped in something. Everyone was fighting battles that others couldn't see. And in 8 days, Daniel would walk into that audition and try to show them all that movement could be freedom, that grace could exist without walking, that hope was worth the risk of pain. He just hoped he was strong enough to deliver on that impossible promise. The day before the audition, Daniel's world fell apart. His mother collapsed at the diner during the lunch rush. The manager called Daniel out of school, voice tight with worry. "Your mom's at Mercy Hospital. She's asking for you." Daniel ran the 12 blocks, lungs burning, terror clawing at his chest. He found Elena in a bed in the emergency room, looking small and fragile under harsh fluorescent lights. "I'm fine," she said immediately, seeing the panic in his eyes. "Just exhaustion. They want to keep me overnight for observation." "Mom!" "Daniel, listen to me." Her hand gripped his with surprising strength. "Tomorrow is your audition. You're going. I'll be fine here. I can't leave you." "Yes, you can. You will." Elena's eyes were fierce. "I didn't work 3 jobs so you could give up on your dreams because I got tired. You're going to that audition, and you're going to dance like your life depends on it." A nurse entered with discharge papers. Not overnight observation. They were sending her home because she couldn't afford to stay. Daniel saw the shame in his mother's eyes and felt something break inside him. That night, alone in their apartment while his mother slept fitfully on the couch, Daniel found an old shoebox under her bed. Inside were newspaper clippings, all about the Sterling family. Articles about the car accident that killed Margaret Sterling. Photos of Harrison carrying young Sophia from the wreckage. And one article that made Daniel's blood run cold. Sterling's last dance. Businessman's secret past as professional dancer ends with wife's death. Harrison Sterling had been a dancer. A brilliant one, according to the article. He'd given it all up for business, but Margaret had encouraged him to keep dancing privately. The night of the accident, they'd been returning from a dance competition, where Harrison had performed for the first time in years. He'd been driving. Daniel understood everything now. Harrison wasn't just grieving his wife and his daughter's paralysis. He was drowning in guilt, convinced that his dancing, his passion, had killed his wife and destroyed his daughter. Saturday arrived with cruel sunshine. Daniel dressed in his Goodwill shirt and altered pants, but now he carried something more than hope. He carried understanding. The mansion's ballroom was transformed. A makeshift stage, 3 judges, and Harrison Sterling standing behind them like an executioner at a trial. 5 other performers went first. Technically perfect, emotionally empty. The judges nodded approvingly. Harrison watched with dead eyes. Then they called Daniel's name. He walked to the stage, found Sophia in the crowd. She mouthed, "For me." The music started. Daniel didn't just dance. He told a story of loss and guilt, of love that survived death, of a man who'd stopped dancing because he blamed beauty for tragedy. Every movement was a conversation with Harrison Sterling's broken soul. When the music ended, the ballroom was silent. Then one of the judges, an elderly woman named Catherine Moore, stood up, tears streaming down her face. "In 40 years of judging dance," she said, voice shaking, "I have never seen anything like that. The technical precision was remarkable for someone self-taught, but the emotion, the storytelling." She looked at Harrison. "This boy has a gift." The other 2 judges nodded agreement. One was already writing notes. "We should discuss compensation for the gala, perhaps a featured—" "No." Harrison's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stepped forward, face pale, hands clenched into fists. "Absolutely not. This boy will not perform at the Sterling Gala." "Harrison, did you not see what we just witnessed?" Catherine protested. "I saw a street performer with some natural ability and no formal training." Harrison's voice was ice. "The Sterling Gala showcases trained professionals, not charity cases we pulled from the sidewalk." "That's not fair," Sophia's voice rang out. She'd wheeled herself forward, face flushed with anger. "Daddy, he was incredible. You know he was." "Sophia, that's enough." "No, you promised. You said if he was good enough, he could dance with me." Tears streamed down her face. "You lied!" Harrison's expression flickered. Pain, guilt, something desperate. But his voice remained firm. "I said if he demonstrated professional-level talent. He did not meet that standard." "You're lying because you're scared," Sophia shouted. "You saw what I saw. Everyone saw it." "Guards," Harrison called. "Please escort Mr. Rivers from the property." 2 security guards moved toward Daniel, but Catherine Moore stepped between them. "Harrison Sterling, I have known you since you were a boy. I taught your wife to dance. I was at your wedding." Her voice trembled with fury. "What you're doing right now would break Margaret's heart." Harrison's face went white. "Don't you dare. She would be ashamed of you. Using your grief as an excuse to destroy hope, to crush beauty, to deny your daughter something that makes her smile for the first time in 2 years. Get out!" Harrison roared, losing all composure. "All of you, the audition is over. There will be no street performers at my gala." The room erupted in chaos. Judges protesting, Sophia sobbing, guards looking uncertain. Daniel stood frozen on the stage, watching his dream shatter. Then a phone camera flash went off. Everyone turned. A young woman stood in the back, a reporter Daniel recognized from local news. "Jennifer Martinez, Channel 7 News," she said calmly. "Mr. Sterling, did you just publicly humiliate a 12-year-old boy because he reminded you of your own past as a dancer?" Harrison's face went from white to crimson. "You have no right to be here." "I have every right. This is a charity event, public interest." Jennifer held up her phone. "I recorded everything. The performance, your daughter's plea, your rejection, should make for a very interesting story about how Manhattan's most prominent philanthropist treats talented children from poor families. You wouldn't dare. Watch the 6 o'clock news." Jennifer's smile was steel. "The public can decide if you were being a protective father or just cruel." Harrison looked like he might explode. But before he could speak, Sophia wheeled herself to the center of the room. "I have something to say." Her voice was small but steady. "My father thinks he's protecting me, but he's not. He's trapping me, just like he trapped himself when he stopped dancing after Mom died. "Sophia, please!" Harrison's voice cracked. "I found Mom's journals, Daddy, the ones she kept about the accident. She wrote that you blamed yourself, that you thought your dancing killed her." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "But she also wrote that the last thing she said before she died was keep dancing, and you never did. You locked that part of yourself away, and now you're trying to lock me away too." The silence was absolute. Harrison Sterling stood in the center of his ballroom, surrounded by witnesses to his cruelty, his secrets exposed, his daughter's pain laid bare. And Daniel finally understood that this was never about him passing an audition. This was about Harrison Sterling facing the man he'd become when he stopped being the man his wife loved. "Everyone out," Harrison whispered. "Please, just everyone leave." As the crowd dispersed, as Jennifer Martinez sent her footage to the newsroom, as judges whispered about scandal, Daniel caught Harrison's eyes and saw a broken man realizing he'd become exactly what he'd hated, someone who crushed dreams to avoid facing his own pain. The video went viral in 3 hours. Daniel woke Sunday morning to his phone exploding with notifications, texts, calls, messages from people he'd never met. He grabbed the ancient device, hands shaking, and opened the first link someone had sent him. Channel 7's website showed Jennifer Martinez's report. "Millionaire banker crushes poor boy's dreams. Watch what happens next." The video had been viewed 2.3 million times. The comment section was a war zone. "This breaks my heart. That boy's talent is real. Harrison Sterling is a monster. How can he do this to his own daughter? Anyone know how to contact this kid? He deserves better." But also, probably a scam. Kids probably planted by the media. Sterling has every right to maintain standards for his event. Poor people always trying to guilt trip the rich. Daniel's mother appeared in the doorway, still weak from yesterday's collapse. "Baby, what's happening? Mrs. Rodriguez downstairs said you're on the news?" Before Daniel could answer, someone pounded on their apartment door. Hard. Urgent. Elena opened it to find 3 reporters with cameras, microphones thrust forward like weapons. "Are you Daniel Rivers' mother? How do you feel about Harrison Sterling's treatment of your son? Is it true your family is facing eviction? Daniel, can you come out? We'd love to interview you about—" Elena slammed the door, face pale. "Daniel, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Daniel's voice cracked. "I just danced, Mom. I just tried to help a girl who's lonely." His phone rang. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, Daniel answered. "Mr. Rivers, this is Catherine Moore, the judge from yesterday's audition." Daniel's heart raced. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about the chaos. I never meant—" "Stop apologizing." Catherine's voice was firm, but kind. "You did nothing wrong. I'm calling because I want to offer you something. I run the Manhattan Youth Dance Academy. Full scholarship. Professional training. Everything you need to develop your gift properly." Daniel couldn't breathe. "Are you serious?" "Completely. What Harrison did yesterday was unconscionable. But your talent is undeniable. Say yes, and we start Monday." It was everything Daniel had ever dreamed of. Professional training. A real future. Escape from poverty through the one thing he loved. "I need to think about it," Daniel heard himself say. "Why?" Catherine sounded genuinely confused. "Because I made a promise to Sophia Sterling, and I don't break promises." After he hung up, Elena stared at her son like she'd never seen him before. "Daniel, that was a full scholarship too." "I know what it was, Mom." "And you said no?" "I said I'd think about it." Daniel looked out the window at the reporters gathering on the street below. "But if I take it, Harrison Sterling wins. He destroys my chance to help Sophia, then someone else swoops in to save me, and he never has to face what he did. Baby, sometimes accepting help isn't about the other person. It's about your future. But what kind of future is it if I learn that promises don't matter? That rich people can crush you and face no consequences?" Daniel's hands clenched. "Sophia needs to see that someone will fight for her. That not everyone gives up when her father says no." Elena pulled her son into a hug. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. You get that from your father." Daniel pulled back, shocked. His mother never mentioned his father. "My dad?" Elena's eyes were distant, sad. "He was a dancer too. Street performer in Times Square. That's how we met. I was 17. He was 19. and he moved like the world couldn't touch him. She smiled at the memory. He left when I got pregnant, said he couldn't handle being trapped. I was angry for years, but now I understand. Some people are too free to be caught. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to know that your gift isn't random. It's in your blood. And maybe your father was a coward who ran away, but you're not. You're fighting for something bigger than yourself. Elena touched his face. Just promise me you know what you're risking. Before Daniel could respond, his phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. Rooftop garden, Sterling Manor. Midnight. Come alone. S. Sophia. At school Monday, Daniel was a celebrity. Students who'd never spoken to him wanted selfies. Teachers looked at him with a mixture of pity and fascination. Marcus Chen approached him at lunch, expression unreadable. You're either the bravest person I know or the stupidest, Marcus said, sitting down uninvited. Probably both, Daniel admitted. The video's at 5 million views now. There are GoFundMe pages trying to raise money for you. Someone started a petition demanding Harrison Sterling apologize. Marcus leaned forward. You could ride this wave, Daniel. Catherine Moore's scholarship, media sympathy, donations. You could actually escape. Escape to what? A life where I abandoned someone who needed help? A life where you're not poor, Marcus's voice rose. Do you understand what's being offered to you? My family would kill for the opportunities you're getting right now. Then maybe they should make viral videos, Daniel snapped. Marcus stood up, hurt flashing across his face. You know what your problem is? You think suffering makes you noble. It doesn't. It just makes you suffer. He walked away before Daniel could respond. That night, Daniel told his mother he was going to the library. Instead, he took 2 buses and walked 3 miles to Sterling Manor, arriving at the gates just before midnight. Officer Mitchell was there, but this time his expression was conflicted. I'm not supposed to let you in. But Miss Sophia called the security office herself. Said if I didn't let you through, she'd tell her father I've been taking naps during my shift. Mitchell sighed. She's on the rooftop garden. Take the service elevator to the 5th floor, then the stairs. The rooftop garden was beautiful. A secret paradise of flowers and fountains, hidden above the city. Sophia sat in her wheelchair near the edge, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn cold. You came, she said, relief evident in her voice. You asked. I wasn't sure you would. After what my father did, after the video. Sophia looked down at her hands. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I never wanted you to be humiliated like that. It's not your fault, isn't it? Sophia's voice was bitter. I'm the one who begged you to perform. I'm the one who gave you hope that my father might actually keep his word.
Why did you ask me to come here? Sophia reached into a bag beside her wheelchair and pulled out an old leather journal. This was my mother's. She kept it from the time she met my father until the night she died. The last entry is from the car, written while my father was driving. She knew they were going to crash. The other driver was coming straight at them, drunk, wrong side of the road.
She had maybe 20 seconds. Sophia's hands trembled as she opened to the final page. I want you to read what she wrote. Daniel took the journal carefully. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. To whoever finds this, tell Harrison he was wrong. About everything. The accident isn't his fault. Dancing didn't kill me. Love didn't kill me. A drunk driver killed me. And that's just cruel randomness. Tell him to dance again. Tell him to let Sophia dance. Tell him that imprisoning himself in guilt is the real tragedy. Tell him I loved him completely, perfectly, and that means trusting he'll survive this and choose life. Choose joy. Choose to believe that beauty is worth the risk. Always worth the risk. Tell Sophia her mother's last thought was pride. Pride that she'll grow up brave enough to love despite pain. And tell Harrison to stop punishing himself with success and start honoring me with happiness. Dance, my love. Please. For me. Keep Dan. The entry stopped mid-word. That's when the impact had happened. Daniel looked up to find Sophia crying silently. My father has never read this. He couldn't bring himself to open her journals. But I read them all. Every single one. And I realized my father didn't stop dancing because he hated it. He stopped because he loved it so much that keeping it would mean facing how much he lost. Sophia, why are you showing me this? Because tomorrow my father is holding a press conference. He's going to apologize publicly for how he treated you. His PR team is forcing him, but it won't be real. It'll be damage control. Unless... Sophia looked at Daniel with desperate hope. Unless you're there. Unless you bring this journal. Unless you make him read what my mother actually wanted. He'll never listen to me. I'm just the poor kid who embarrassed him. No, Sophia said fiercely. You're the dancer who reminded him of everything he's been running from. You scare him, Daniel, because when he looks at you, he sees himself at your age, full of passion and hope and the belief that movement could save your soul. A sound behind them made them both turn. Harrison Sterling stood in the doorway to the rooftop, still wearing his business suit despite the late hour. His expression was unreadable. Sophia, I've been looking everywhere for you. Mrs. Chen said you weren't in your room. He stopped, seeing Daniel. What is he doing here? Daddy, please just listen. No. Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. I have spent 2 days dealing with public relations nightmares because of this boy. My business partners are questioning my judgment. My reputation is being shredded across social media. And now I find him on my private rooftop with my daughter in the middle of the night. He's here because I asked him to be, Sophia said, lifting her chin. And I have something you need to see. She held up the journal. Harrison's face went white. Where did you get that? From Mom's study. You locked the room, but you forgot I still had the key you gave me before the accident. Sophia's voice was steady despite her tears. I've read all her journals, Daddy. Every single one. And the last entry is something you need to hear. I don't... Harrison's composure was cracking. Put that away. No. You've been running from this for 2 years. You've been punishing yourself and me and everyone around you because you're too afraid to face what Mom actually wanted. Sophia thrust the journal toward Daniel. Read it. Out loud. Daniel looked between father and daughter, saw the desperation in Sophia's eyes and the terror in Harrison's, and made a choice. He began to read. With each word, Harrison Sterling's armor shattered piece by piece. By the time Daniel reached "Keep Dan," Harrison was on his knees, sobs tearing from his chest like something vital being ripped out. She wanted me to dance, he gasped. She wanted, and I stopped. I thought... Sophia wheeled herself to her father, wrapped her arms around him. She wanted you to live, Daddy. She wanted us both to live. Not just survive. Live. Harrison looked up at Daniel through tears. I've been so cruel to you, because you're everything I used to be. Everything I killed when Margaret died. You didn't kill it, Daniel said quietly. You just locked it away. And maybe I can't make Sophia walk, but maybe I can show you both that movement, real movement. Doesn't require working legs. It just requires a willing heart. Harrison Sterling looked at this 12-year-old boy who'd somehow become the key to unlocking 2 years of grief, and asked the question that would change everything. Will you teach me to dance again? The Sterling Gala took place 3 weeks later, but it was nothing like Harrison had originally planned. The press conference 2 days after the rooftop encounter had shocked Manhattan's elite. Harrison Sterling, standing before cameras with red-rimmed eyes and his daughter beside him, had done something unprecedented. He'd told the truth. I have spent 2 years, he'd said, voice shaking, punishing myself for my wife's death by punishing everyone around me, especially my daughter. I convinced myself that passion was dangerous, that joy was irresponsible, that the only way to protect Sophia was to teach her that the world was cruel and hope was foolish. He'd looked directly at the camera. I was wrong, and I owe Daniel Rivers an apology that no words can adequately express. This boy saw my daughter's pain and offered her something I couldn't, the belief that being broken doesn't mean being dead. The video had gone even more viral than Jennifer Martinez's original report. Now, standing backstage at the gala, Daniel felt his hands trembling. His mother stood beside him, wearing a dress that Catherine Moore had insisted on buying her. Elena looked beautiful and terrified in equal measure. You don't have to do this, she whispered, if it's too much pressure. Mom, I made a promise. Daniel squeezed her hand. And for the first time in my life I have the chance to actually keep one. The ballroom was packed, every seat filled with Manhattan's elite, but also, at Harrison's insistence, with people from Daniel's neighborhood. Mrs. Washington sat in the front row beside Mrs. Rodriguez. Marcus Chen was there with his family, looking uncomfortable in a suit. Catherine Moore had brought her entire academy, and in the center of the front row, Sophia Sterling sat in her wheelchair, wearing a dress that shimmered like starlight. The lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the stage. Harrison Sterling walked out, and the crowd fell silent. He wasn't wearing his usual business suit. Instead, he wore simple dance attire, the same kind Daniel wore. His feet were bare. His expression was vulnerable in a way no one in that room had ever seen. 2 years ago, Harrison began, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. I lost my wife. I thought I lost everything that mattered, but I was wrong. I also lost myself. I stopped dancing because I blamed beauty for tragedy. I stopped living because I was afraid of feeling. He looked toward the wings where Daniel waited. Then a 12-year-old boy reminded me that my wife's last words weren't about fear. They were about faith. Faith that life continues. Faith that love survives death. Faith that movement, real movement, comes from the heart, not the legs. Harrison extended his hand toward the wings. Daniel Rivers, would you join me? Daniel walked onto the stage and the crowd erupted in applause. But he only had eyes for Sophia, whose face was streaming with tears. The music started, not classical this time, but something modern, alive, pulsing with rhythm and hope. Harrison and Daniel began to move together. It was awkward at first. Harrison's movements were rusty, hesitant, carrying 2 years of grief and guilt. But Daniel moved with him, patient, encouraging, showing him that muscle memory never truly died. Then something magical happened. Harrison stopped thinking. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget. He began to dance, really dance, with the kind of freedom that only comes from surrendering control. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Manhattan's most powerful banker moved across the stage with a grace that made grown men weep. But Daniel wasn't done. He left Harrison center stage and walked to the front row. He extended his hand to Sophia. Your turn, he said simply. Sophia looked at him with wide eyes. Daniel, I can't. You can. Not the way you used to, but in a new way. A way that's yours. Daniel's smile was gentle. Trust me? Sophia took his hand. Daniel lifted her from the wheelchair. She was light, so light, and carried her to the stage. Harrison moved to help, but Daniel shook his head. This was Sophia's moment. He set her down gently in the center of the stage, supporting her weight, and the music shifted to something slower, dreamlike. I can't move my legs, Sophia whispered. Then we move everything else, Daniel replied, and they danced. Daniel became Sophia's legs, moving them together across the stage while her arms created shapes. Her upper body told stories. Her face expressed emotions that words could never capture. She wasn't dancing despite her wheelchair. She was dancing as herself, complete and whole and beautiful. The crowd was silent except for the sound of people crying. When the music ended, Daniel lowered Sophia gently back into her wheelchair. But before he could step away, she grabbed his hand. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me. Harrison joined them on stage, and for the first time in 2 years, he pulled his daughter into a hug that wasn't about protection or guilt, just pure love. Then he looked at Daniel. I have something for you. He gestured to the wings. Mrs. Washington walked out, carrying a folder. 3 days ago, Harrison said, addressing the entire ballroom now, I established the Margaret Sterling Foundation for Artistic Excellence. Its mission is to provide full scholarships, training, and support for talented young people from families who couldn't otherwise afford professional arts education. He turned to Daniel. You are our first scholarship recipient. Full funding for Catherine Moore's Academy, plus a living stipend for you and your mother. No child should have to choose between helping their family and developing their gifts. Daniel couldn't breathe. Mr. Sterling, there's more. Harrison's smile was real this time. I'm also creating a specialized program called Dance Without Limits, adaptive dance training for children with disabilities. Sophia will co-direct it, and we'd like you to be our lead instructor. The crowd erupted in applause, but Daniel could barely hear it over the roaring in his ears. Why? He managed to ask. Why are you doing this? Harrison knelt down so they were eye level. Because you gave me back something I thought was dead. You showed me that my wife's legacy isn't grief, it's grace. You taught my daughter that limitation isn't the same as impossibility. And you proved that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the courage to keep dancing even when the world tells you to stop. He stood, addressing the crowd again. Every person in this room has something they stopped doing because of fear, because of loss, because someone told them they couldn't or shouldn't. Daniel Rivers is 12 years old and has nothing except a gift and the refusal to give up on promises. If he can find the courage to dance, so can we all. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Later, as the gala wound down, Daniel stood on the rooftop garden with his mother. Below them, Manhattan glittered like a constellation brought to earth. "Your father would be proud," Elena said softly. "Maybe," Daniel replied, "but I think I'm finally proud of myself. Not because I'm getting a scholarship or because I'm on the news, but because I kept my promise. I showed Sophia she could dance. I showed Harrison he could live again." Elena pulled her son close. "You showed everyone that dignity doesn't require wealth, that talent doesn't require pedigree, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is believe in hope when the world demands despair." Behind them, the rooftop door opened. Sophia wheeled out, Harrison pushing her chair. "There you are," Sophia said, smiling. "We've been looking everywhere." "Sorry," Daniel said. "Just needed some air." Harrison stepped forward, and for a moment, he looked uncomfortable. Then he did something Daniel never expected. He extended his hand for a formal handshake. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." Daniel shook his hand, and in that gesture was reconciliation, respect, and the acknowledgement that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. 6 months later, the Margaret Sterling Foundation had provided scholarships to 200 children across 5 states. Dance Without Limits had programs in 12 cities, and Daniel Rivers, the dirty boy who'd walked into Sterling Manor with nothing but hope and talent, had become the face of a movement proving that excellence blooms wherever courage is planted. But the moment Daniel treasured most came during their first Dance Without Limits showcase. Sophia performed a piece she'd choreographed herself, a solo that used her wheelchair not as a limitation, but as an extension of her artistry. Wheels spinning, arms flowing, face radiating joy. When she finished, the audience stood and cheered. But Sophia wheeled directly to where Harrison sat in the front row. "Did you see, Daddy? Did you see me dance?" Harrison was crying openly now, no longer ashamed of his tears. "I saw you fly, sweetheart. Your mother would be so proud." "She'd be proud of you too," Sophia said, "for choosing to live again, for choosing us." As father and daughter embraced, Daniel stood in the wings with his mother, watching the family he'd helped heal. "You changed their lives," Elena whispered. "No," Daniel replied, thinking of his mother's sacrifices, of Mrs. Washington's patience, of Sophia's courage, of Harrison's transformation. "We changed each other. That's what real dancing is, moving together, supporting each other, creating something beautiful that none of us could create alone." And in that moment, Daniel Rivers understood the most important lesson of all, that true wealth isn't what you have, but what you give. That real strength isn't never falling, but always rising. And that the most powerful thing anyone can do is dance, not just with their feet, but with their whole heart, even when the world says it's impossible, especially then.